So we're live. Welcome everybody to our live, very first broadcast of Cove Aid live streaming from all across the world. I'm not sure how many participants we actually have at this moment, but to all of you out there, welcome. We have a live discussion between several participants from across the world, specifically just talking about Cove Aid and what the company stands for, how we see the impact in Africa. So we've got many panelists joining in with this conversation. I'm going to kickstart the conversation by introducing everybody. So first off, let's introduce the co-founders of Cove Aid. We've got Niklas Hupman, co-founder based in Germany. We've got Kili Andrea, co-founder based in Denmark as well. We've got Scott Patterson. He's our head of brand, and he's based in the Netherlands. We've got Phumi Mashego, a South African sister looking after our SMEs, managing director of Igniter, based in South Africa, as I said before. We've got Cindy Lee, the esteemed television and film director all the way from South Africa. Hey there, Sins. We've got Thandi Davis, deputy chair and independent producer from the Independent Producers Organization, also based in South Africa. And we've last but not least, Karabo. Basically, he's our digital guy, product designer, comes from an ad background, communications background, the man that knows all about the digital realm, currently working at Nedbank. So that's our panel for today, guys. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start off this discussion by a quick intro as we go along from each person, so the community gets to know you. Please remember that as we stream, more and more people will be hopping on, so introduce yourself as many times in the conversation just to refresh. But let's have an honest and heated conversation about what's happening with COVID-19 across the world. Let's make this conversation count. Let's make this impact be seen across Africa, as starting with South Africa, I suppose, and the rest of the world. We've got a couple of questions that we'll be going through today. Not strict. For all of you that are logging on, join in on the conversation, send in your notes and comments, and let's have this debate kick off. So to kick off this discussion, let's start with Niklas. Scott, sorry. Let's start off with Scott. Scott, do you want to just tell us a bit about Cove Aid?
Yeah, so basically, it's quite an incredible story. And I got brought in about 13 days ago. Well, no, 12 days ago. I got a call. I was lying in bed, and someone said that there's this initiative, and they are trying to raise 15 million euros for Doctors Without Borders to help with the fight of coronavirus in Africa. And I had actually spent the 3 weeks before that really, really concerned about what was going on and what was going to happen in South Africa in particular, because I grew up there. And I got wind of this project, and I immediately thought to myself, I have to get involved. And I did get involved. And basically, what's happened is I've now become brand director. And basically, this initiative was started 13 days ago. Within that time, we have built a network of over 270 volunteers from literally every single corner of the globe.
Wow.
And we've all come together for the same purpose. We all are here to, we are uniting ourselves to fight this common goal, which is coronavirus. And, you know, I found the journey quite incredible to see just how something, you know, that has put us down as much as it has united us at the same time. And what I found incredibly special about the project was the fact that, you know, we were using music as the medium that would bind us all together. And basically what we are offering, and this we have to get there. So basically, what we are doing is we are doing a live stream music festival, which we broadcast every single weekend for the next coming weeks. And then during the week, we'll be introducing different panel discussions, talking about the creative industry as a whole in Africa and how it's coping with coronavirus and the pandemic that we're in. And obviously, at the same time, empowering people to stay at home by giving them entertainment, by giving them things that they can learn from and enjoy while staying at home. So, yeah, that's a little bit about what we're doing and who we are.
That's amazing, Scott. And just correct me if I'm wrong, but COVID also looks more not just the advertising industry, but it's the all spectrum creative industry that you're looking at, the arts industry as it gets broader.
So it's our focus is on the music industry, because obviously we find music is a medium that unites us all globally. So our focus is on music. But what kind of happened as we were going along this journey was we realized that the whole creative industry has suffered through this crisis. So we thought it'd be a shame not to bring light to the whole creative industry. So that's why our foundation is the music festival. But as I said, we want to be introducing the topic of how the creative industry is coping as a whole on the African continent.
Beautiful stuff. So our next person that I'm going to introduce is co-founder Niklas Hoopman. Niklas, I think I'm going to start off the conversations here with you. Hit you with the first question so we get the ball rolling here. Look, I know it's a serious situation that we're all in at this moment, and COVID-19 is a global pandemic. But let's talk about Africa for a second. And what does this pertain to South Africa? How do you see COVID-19 and the global impact that it will have on Africa as we move forward?
I think there are a couple of things that need to be outlined in the beginning. I think Africa did, in comparison to many other continents, an incredible job in shutting down their countries in the beginning and sort of taking all the precautionary a lot of the countries took precautionary measures quicker than the extra-continental neighbors, given the fact that they have had experience with other pandemics and other epidemics. However, if you really look at this beast coronavirus and what it does to the countries, it doesn't look at the borders. It transcends anything. There is nothing that can stop it. Almost every single country in the world is affected. And now, if you look at Africa specifically, I think it is pretty objective to outline that in many countries, there is a lack of clinical resources and basic clinical material that other countries do have outside of Africa. And this aspect worried me. I was worried that the millions of people that suffer from HIV and from tuberculosis, before this even started, evolving into a humanitarian nightmare, this worried me, and I wanted to step in as fast as possible to flatten the curve, because in Europe, where I live, we have experienced a nightmare already, and I cannot imagine what will happen to Africa if this will go there and unfolds its beast. And this is why we founded COVID Africa.
Beautiful. Look, I share, I think many Africans echo your concern as well. Thanks for starting this initiative, firstly. I think it's muchly needed. The more voices we hear, the more conversations we have about it, the more people know about about COVID-19 and are more educated around the topic. Just on that, I know, Pumi, from your experience working with SMEs, the conversation on the ground isn't always as fluid as we would like, not get the guys on the ground don't get communication as easily as possible. Do you want to just tap in on there on what Niklas has spoken about?
So, I mean, there are a couple of things, and I'm greatly inspired by by the fact that there are people all over the world looking at us out here in Africa and thinking, ooh, this could become a tsunami. I think we're all aware that it could be a tsunami, but because we've survived other pandemics, we also have a little bit of, our government may be feeling incredibly like we have to shut this down. But for a lot of people on the ground, and I know the images have been beamed around the world, we've got issues with how do we social distance when we are so crowded. When our townships are so crowded, when we have so much informal settlements in that, and we've survived a pandemic. So people are going, this is the way we felt in the 90s when everybody was going, AIDS is going to wipe out everybody, and it didn't. So there is a little bit of that lag on is this thing really as serious as it is? Is the government is saying I must stay home, but I can't stay home because I've got to get out there and work. A lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with that are on the ground, they're also subsistence entrepreneurs. They don't have lots of money sitting in the bank waiting for them to be able to wait out a 3-month wave of lockdowns. So they need to get out and work as soon as possible. And all of those kinds of dynamics are the dynamics that we're dealing with over here. And I think for me, even looking at NGOs that are wanting to come in and help and assist, we've also seen across Africa, lots of NGOs coming in with very good intentions, but also with very clear ideas of how they want their intentions to be on the ground. And those things kind of don't work. And a lot of people do actually walk away feeling a little bit kind of disheartened, despondent, feeling unappreciated or unloved or not even recognized for the work that they do on the ground. And I think for me, more than anything, I think the opportunity for COVID is really an opportunity to engage even before getting on the ground and understanding what the ground work looks like and what it is that the people need. So when you do offer help, you offer the kind of help that people need, not the kind of help that you want to give.
Yeah. I think that's a very important. Thank you. Firstly, thank you, Pumi. Important point there is that whilst resources are at the forefront, everything has a staggered effect. So resources being at the forefront, but in terms of the communication and the creative industry that we are speaking to, we see that a lack of understanding of the importance of what is happening on the base ground is a big issue at this point. I think for Pumi, as you raised in your conversation topics, getting that understanding and building it into what Cove Aid is actually doing could amplify what you guys are doing at this very moment. I want to open up the panel to anybody else if they've got any other points to bring to that topic.
I don't know if this is even a part of it, but I think that's something that's really interesting about what we're doing and as Cove Aid is, obviously our thing is we need to support the doctors and the doctors that are on the ground, and we're raising this money for the doctors. But what we found through the process is, if we're creating this platform and this movement to support these doctors, then at the same time, you might as well be bringing in and bringing up the talent that is in the country. And I think that there's a twofold to what we're doing with Cove Aid. It's about what we're doing, obviously, with the doctors, and it's about the support that we are providing to Doctors Without Borders. But at the same time, it's also a platform for up and coming artists and for artists in Africa in general to be put on that global stage. So yeah, it's twofold for me.
Yeah. Sorry, Pumi, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say, and that for me, it's like a left hand and a right hand. What's amazing is that the thing that connects people, the thing that almost everywhere around the world that we have seen is we've seen people playing their violins on their balconies. We see kids dancing on TikTok. It's all creative. That's where our outlets are. And the creative industry, unfortunately, nobody kind of on the hierarchy of needs, right? The creative industry is right at the end. Nobody thinks about it until, oh, we need to talk to people. Oh, we need people's attention. Let's get the musicians. Let's get the actors. People listen to those people. People want to hear from those people. And what's really nice about an initiative like this is upfront. It's saying we're going to center the thing that binds us, and that's what creativity is about. It gives us outlets, but it also binds us. It transcends languages. Whatever art form it is, whether it's dance or painting or music, didn't we all I think probably all of us were part of the 30 million people that watched Andrea Bocelli. Yeah. I don't know what he's saying. But whatever he was saying, right? And that's what music can do. And that's why it's so powerful to use that platform to create an awareness and to bring in the funds, to bring doctors to communities, because we know one of the things about Africa in particular is that if you think that the service collapsed in Italy, our service collapsed years ago. So even as we're watching the numbers go up, that's not our worry. Our worry is not the service is going to collapse. There is no service there to take in the people when they get sick. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. Somebody else has to.
No, please give us more input. Thank you, Pumi. Thank you.
For me, the key thing is the fact that you're using African musicians. I think very often when you look at any kind of aid for Africa, you've got, Big Brother, if I can call it that, artists coming in from the US, coming in from Europe, and speaking at us as opposed to from us. So I think the key thing that I'm enjoying about this is it's an opportunity for Africa to speak for itself and to showcase its own talents at the end of the day, and not once again have this Western top-heavy response to showcasing or reflecting Africa and its needs.
Yeah, I think that in the beginning that was something that was very important to us, and I'll pass on to Nick now because I know that he has a lot to say about this.
It's not just the artist aspect that defines us, like the whole bottom-up thing. We were just talking about this top-down speaking from a pedestal that is so predominant in the NPO world, because a lot of the times it has to be corporate backed in order to get the infrastructure to pull it off. And this is what defines us from anybody else, that at least at this stage, what defines us from other NPOs regarding the coronavirus is that we were able to establish a bottom-up grassroots movement within a very short amount of time. And the beauty of it is that because of this short amount of time and the nature of the virus, where every day counts, we can have significant impact. And we want to mobilize that force and mobilize more people to join that movement, no matter where they're from, to have the biggest impact possible. And we put out this number of $50 million in the beginning. That was for one reason, to be legit, to be heard, to be significant. But in the end, I think if it keeps on going the way it is right now, we can transcend those numbers just because the need is a lot larger, and there should be no end in sight in order to tackle humanitarian crisis. And I think this is what I stand for with this organization and with all the volunteers that we have mobilized.
I would like to jump in a little bit as well and share my 2 cents. So I remember when the global impact actually started making worldwide news. I was one of the few people who caught onto it. But when I called my mom, she lives in Alexandra. It's a township, and I'm in Randburg, right in the suburbs. And when I called her and I asked her if she knows about COVID, and she said no, I don't. And I had to sit on a call with her for about 20 minutes to kind of explain and tell her that, look, we're going to be under lockdown and that there won't be any movement around the country. And at first she was like, is this like flu? And I'm like, Mom, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. She was like, okay, but what's going to happen? Because the difference between me and you is that I have a car, you don't have a car. And then she was asking me, how is she going to go get her food? Because now she has to get into a taxi, crowded with people, go to a crowded market to get food and then come back. We in the suburbs have the luxury to go stockpiling. I don't know if you guys have seen the images on the internet where people were just like stockpiling food in droves and droves. And
And toilet paper.
And toilet paper, right? So what really broke my heart though was I could communicate with my peers using technology to kind of like say, guys, this is what's happening. But then I started thinking about what about folks like my mom who actually don't have access to data? She relies on me to buy her data, you know what I mean? So she can connect on WhatsApp with her, peers. But then I think about her peers who probably rely on their kids, but their kids can also provide for them. So what happens to that stream of information? And now we've got soldiers in our townships that are actually patrolling, and actually some people are saying they are abusing their power because they're locking people in and beating people up and all sorts of stuff. They're not really on the ground to share the message and to actually teach people about social distancing. They're there to just enforce the law, So I think this initiative, using the power of music, I hope it can reach millions of people within South Africa and outside of South Africa that are privileged to have access to data like us, so that they can go and actually teach people, A couple of weeks ago, I was on Instagram and there was this musician, I think he's called the Kifness or something. He was making musical parodies, right, about COVID and how it's driving him crazy, but he's actually teaching, he's actually teaching and using creativity and music to kind of like make me sitting at home trying to figure out how to work remotely, be sane as well, by laughing at his humor. And I saw a couple of other comedians now that are coming out and starting to want to raise a voice against us. Some of them are catching on a little bit too late, because I feel like, the industry should have done a lot more work in coming out when what time was there. But I think everybody was in a panic, right? It's like, oh, I'm about to lose my job. There's no shooting for Cindy anymore to do ads. Like, how is that going to add? How's that going to work? So people are panicking and there's too much money. But I'm appreciating that there is technology. There is these platforms for us to actually connect globally and locally. The stuff that you are doing pretty is actually amazing, because what I was struggling with, I work in the financial service sector, and say who's on the ground actually teaching people about everything that we, the privileged, know, So earlier I made a point about there's payment holidays that we as banks are offering. But then I'm thinking, the person who's on the ground who doesn't know what a payment holiday means, being translated into their native language so that they can understand it better. Who's there to do the work, right? And I'm hoping we can use music to kind of like teach people about what that means. It doesn't really have to be a funky song, but it can be an educational song or some sort of medium to kind of like teach people. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I just want to say something that a great thing about musicians and using South African talent is that the people of South Africa really look up to our artists, our actors, and our singers. They see them. They don't listen to our government. Even the ANC, it doesn't matter who the ANC are. The people nobody cares about what they say. They don't believe a word that they say. So if you're getting a musician that they love, that they know, that they respect, that lives next door to them, that's part of their family, who is sending a message saying, guys, this is a real problem. We all need to stay at home. We need to look after each other. We need to raise money. We need to do whatever it is we need to do. The message will be spread that much quicker. And I think that's what's so exciting about this initiative. As you were saying, Karabo, I mean, if these amazing artists get up there and sing and spread the word, then your friends will hear it. They'll go and tell their mother, who will tell your mother. Send a WhatsApp, by the way, do you know that my son said that my son's son saw so-and-so? Oh, so-and-so, wow, I better stay at home. And that's how it works here, So I think it's an amazing initiative. And I'm very excited to be on this panel. Yeah, it's great.
I think we do need to be cognizant of one thing. It goes back to the issue of data costs and how people access their media. I've worked across this continent. I've worked in 23 countries across this continent. I've worked for NPOs. I've worked for broadcasters, you name it. And most people get their media via television, via radio. That's fundamentally where it is. They can't afford data. That's where they get it. And I think the key problem that you have here is because specifically in terms of the audiovisual sector, our sector has been shut down. We cannot go onto set. We cannot film. We cannot do anything in any shape or form. In other circumstances, for example, in most of the soaps, we would be able to be operational. We'd be able to put storylines in, educational storylines, very quickly into soaps, for example, to talk about what's happening on the ground and how to manage processes. But we can't do that. So I think that as much as we can talk about these initiatives, this is about raising money fundamentally, and those of us who have access to data probably do have access to being able to contribute towards a fund like this. The real people we're trying to engage with from a communications perspective are people who don't have access to exactly this technology that we're utilizing at this point in time. So where it becomes interesting is how do we as creatives, considering the fact that we've completely shut down as a sector, start developing tools to be able to speak to people still utilizing traditional mediums. So how do we work along with local broadcasters who can only do news reporting at this point in time? And it's one of the debates that is happening is, are creatives essential services? I mean, at this point in time, the only reason why people are keeping sane is because of the content that we have produced to date that people can access, whether that's on TV or whether that's listening to it or seeing it. But that's what effectively happened. Globally, the industry shut down. Within 3 to 4 months, we'll be having a dearth of content and be back on repeats at that point in time. So how do we start working with broadcasters, especially on this continent, to start producing new content that's going to fill that gap in a way where we still lock down fundamentally? And these are kind of some of the key issues that creators are having to look at. And as I said, that key issue is, are creators essential services? They're there to keep you sane. They're there to tell stories. They're there to educate. And with them locked down, how do we keep that momentum going in terms of having people accessing information in a fun, a quirky, a relevant way?
Thandi, if I can just step in there. If we look at what Karabo mentioned, the Kiffness, for instance, being able to utilize his individual platform, his own Facebook page or Instagram page, and spread a message through music, but a very informative message that's both engaging, it builds awareness, and at the same time, it's entertaining. Now, I think that's a very useful way or an innovative way of him using his very own means within the creative industry and with his creative know-hows to spread the message about COVID. One of the things I think you touched on now is that when you get down to the grassroots of it all, those guys that don't have data, those guys that don't have enough airtime to make a phone call, how do we tap into getting communication through to them? I think that's what I want to throw back at all of you as panelists, is have a look at how do we use this music platform on a grassroots level, understanding the data restrictions in Africa, to say the least. How do we use the music platform, the entertainment industry, the creative industry? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think this means, for me, it means having to, in some levels, almost partner with traditional media operators. You need to go to where people are. And that means that you have to sit down and have conversations with radio stations across the continent to take an hour of your live music feed over the weekend. I just think that fundamentally there needs to be a thinking of the continent that we're on. I know we're trying to raise money, but I'm assuming that we're also trying to raise awareness at the same time. And in terms of creating that awareness, we have to go and utilize those mediums that people have access to. And I think that's very key. I think as we sit here in our middle income budget bubbles and being able to do this online, we tend to forget about the fact that someone who is not there, and as you were saying with your mother, that she can still see SABC, in terms of the public broadcaster. So the engagement needs to be there where people actually consume their media. I think is going to be key in terms of doing this.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating point. How to get creative with getting the message out there in terms of, obviously, people don't have access to this. And I'm happy that's come up, because it's a challenge that I think we should kind of take on and see if we can work with it. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because for me, you've got a good point. If we can figure out through this platform to connect with governments, especially from a national broadcasting perspective, governments to stream this through to educate, then we will actually be making a real impact for the doctors at the end of the day, right? So as much as we, like, the South is semi-privileged, but there's like other countries like within the SADC region and going up that do not have our privilege. I do know that we have disadvantaged people within South Africa as well. But like when I think about, the fact that we can maybe reach out to the SABC and figure out how do we put this onto some slot and get it streamed so it can be consumed by the likes of your Black Twitter, who will make this big trend, and then from there on, the other countries will pick it up, and then let's figure out how to use those same people that are picking up our trendingness to connect with their governments, you know what I mean? And then from there on, the aid for Africa can take the ripple effect. Going back to the fact that you said a day cannot be wasted. So for me, it's key as to how do we figure out how to make an impact using technology, because right now that's where we are. Right? It's like, how do we use technology to change archaic ways of communicating? You know what I mean? Instead of going the other way around and waiting, how do we say we can live stream this to a radio station playing live, and then live stream this to all the 3 or 4 national channels that you've got on your end, and getting those brand managers or whoever the guys are in charge to actually, understand that this needs to be done.
I do want to touch on that. Sorry. Oh,
yes.
You go first.
I just want to say that I completely agree, but I think that the way that we need to look at this is more like, how do we access the national broadcasters? Because us as a movement, we don't want to align to any political parties or to any government. It's about how do we then access those national broadcasters in these countries and find those ways in, rather than going with the governmental approach.
Yeah, just before we digress into looking at this from a broader spectrum, I think let's keep the focus lens on this, in that we are looking at the music platform as a stepping stone, right? We are looking at the music industry and the creative industry to start the conversation. I think the broader conversation here is, and this is where all of you come into play, those that have worked in the formal industries, those that understand the SMEs, those that understand the creative industries within Africa, is that how do NPOs make that difference and get the government to have that actual conversation with a brand that actually has money to pool those resources together. That's where, it's tidbits of everything that everybody's saying, but that's where the conversation needs to be a lot more harder on. So those in the industry, what's your thoughts on that? Pumi, I'm going to throw it back to you.
The coolest thing, and 2 things. The coolest thing about NPOs is that they get their legitimacy from the communities within which they work. So they don't need the government to say, yes, you can go and talk to those people. They just, if the community accepts them, if the community welcomes them, in fact, more often than not, the government finds themselves having to engage those NPOs because they need them much more than the NPOs need the government. But I think on the issue of creativity and music and platforms is, if anything comes out of this COVID mess, is we're all going to learn to be agile and to think differently about what we have always known. So, it's right now we're kind of going, let's plug into the national broadcasters and see if we can get live streaming. But guys, I can tell you that in rural Lusikisiki, they have TikToks, and they are not, they're not on TikTok, the app, right? But they are engaging with this thing every single day. Facebook is in Mahlamatini, all of those things. And it simply is going to be about refocusing and pivoting the way that we think, engaging people, and the lag in time. It does not all have to be in real time. As long as the message has gotten through, as long as the people that you need on site have come on site. And that's where the the kind of the shifting sands are for an organization like this. And, I'm just thinking, because we are talking about music, and I was trying to figure out, looking around the table, who may remember this. Cindy, you and I will remember this. There was a time. You remember it too? So there was a time, guys. There was a time when Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist all over the world. All over the world, not just in South Africa, all over the world. Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist. And one concert at Wembley Stadium changed him from being a terrorist to being a freedom fighter, in a statement. That guy is still alive. Tony Hollingsworth started the movement. He produced the entire concert for his birthday. And that's what music can do. That's the power of music and the power of bringing people together around a cause. That's what it does. Now there are people who can't imagine that Nelson Mandela could ever be considered a terrorist. And that's what music was able to do. That's what one concert was able to start, that kind of a ripple effect. And for me, it's about changing the way that we're seeing these things. Back then, mega concerts weren't a thing. Today, mega concerts, everybody does a mega concert. Global Citizens does a mega concert. Maybe the way that we're looking at mobilizing a concert of this nature, bringing musicians like this together, maybe we've got to relook the way that we're doing that. And that's what's going to be the big differentiator, and that's the stone that's going to cause the ripple in the lake. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Pumi. I think
I like that.
There's 2 points of discussion here. We're talking about awareness on a ground level and affecting change on a ground level. But I think for the purpose of this conversation, we need to raise money. We need to get those guys, Doctors Without Borders, as much money as possible so that they can effect change on that ground level that we're speaking about. And that money doesn't necessarily come from the guys in Lesikisiki, as you're speaking of, but we got to look at what are the opportunities within the creative industry that we can utilize and leverage so that we can get as much capital as possible to effect this change. So I want to bring the topic back to this point, right? Our Doctors Without Borders. That's our goal at the end, getting them as much money as possible so that we have enough doctors out there doing as much as possible. Digital platforms, NPOs, are those effective mediums to actually be utilizing to get as much funding in times like this?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, if I can just say something, I think that to that point, I think that, from even where we've gotten to in the past 2 weeks, I think that we are proving how effective, technology is becoming in terms of how we can help people beyond our borders. I mean, just this movement alone, I actually have not met any of the people that I'm working with on this movement. And yet we've been working together 19 hours a day, every day for the past 2 weeks. And I feel like I've known these guys for years. So I think that, technology, especially now, I think we are almost, in a way, hopefully we're going to prove that it is possible and it is a thing.
I think I would take it even a step further. In the beginning of this project, what I try to do is I try to hand out pamphlets and posters in my hometown to raise little donations with the people I know in my community. And these contributions that I wanted to get from my community, I wanted to funnel into Kibera, a township in Nairobi. And I wanted to support the people suffering from HIV and tuberculosis in that township. However, I realized that posters and pamphlets, obviously in this time where people have to stay at home, is not the mean to do it. So I sat back down, but I didn't want to give up on that notion. Okay, I have free time. I have today's technology at hand, and I have this sense of togetherness that I can mobilize to have a true impact. So I sat down, and from nowhere, like a Google document had to be built. Anything that you touch in technology comes out of nowhere. So we focused on Zoom calls like this. We focused on Slack, a software that enables us to form teams. And in that environment, combining Slack and Zoom call and Google, we were able to build an international branding and an international movement within 2 weeks. And I think that is remarkable. And in a sense, we are surrounded with professionals in our team. We are not just students volunteering. We also have unpaid senior strategic officers like Scott, with experience in marketing. And I think all of us share this consensus that this atmosphere and this environment that we have digitally at our hand is actually more efficient and more fast-paced than any office environment can ever be. There is no running back and forth through the aisles. It's just sitting there, getting it done, and calling somebody as soon as you need it. And because of today's technology, we were able to build this beautiful thing called COVID Africa. And I don't think it would have been possible through a physical office or whatever. And actually, one more notion. I think if you would have had that physical space, we wouldn't have been an inclusive movement, because you can only source the people around you. However, through technology, we were able to have 270 people looking at me at our daily 5 o'clock calls. Some of them sit in Australia, some of them sit in Paraguay, and the next one sits in Cameroon. It's incredible. And having this influx of different ideas, of different inspirations, of different work ethics, I think this wild, colorblind mixture is the most thing that technology can create. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I agree. Technology can actually make an impact in changing lives. The fact that you've got over 250 people who are connected is amazing, and I think there could be more. So yeah, I'm in agreement with the technology statement.
Yeah, and also we even were able to create a environment where we can promote people. It was incredible. In 1 week, we could see who was working the hardest, who was the most dedicated, and then it was incredible. Suddenly, we became a structure out of nowhere, and I didn't even know these guys. It was incredible. I still actually don't know how Scott came into play until this day.
Thank God for Scott. But we're speaking about structure. What are some of the ways that people can participate or get involved? We want to speak about the website, or can I throw this to you, Kilia?
Yes. So it was interesting to see at the very beginning. We just tried to get volunteers on board, as many as possible, and use them as a workforce. But we soon noticed that, given that many people, we have to organize us somehow. And so we were all on Slack, and then we had all of a sudden 250 people sending us messages every day and asking us for tasks and how they can support us, because they wanted to do some purpose in this time and wanted to help. And then we had to sit down and find a way how we can kind of put each teams in kind of cross-functional teams, so everyone can work on their own. And we built, like, I have a background from innovation consultancy, so I put kind of what I've learned from lean methodologies into practice on how we structure this movement. And we build a structure that people can work cross-functional and can work on their own. So we made clear structure on who has which ownership, and gave ownership to people. And in that way, we could really reduce the amount of communication between each department, and everyone was able to work on their own. And so that way, over the past 2 weeks, it was very centralized in a way, but also very broad at the same time. Like, we had people working at all ends, and it was just very interesting to see how we made that engine running in such a short time, just by putting that agile and digital approach on an NPO. I think it's very good to see that, because I think nowadays many NPOs, they've been existing for many, many years, and I think that's also the way they operate. And what we managed to do is approach like a new way of working on an NPO. And that's, I think, what made it possible to grow that fast and within 2 weeks.
And I think there's a readiness among the entire world where people feel like they have time for a side project.
Yeah, we all have time.
People are looking for this extra purpose outside of work, outside of university. And through technology and through our platform, we invite everybody to use our platform and to get an outlet for their purpose that they're trying to seek.
So I mean, if someone did want to become a volunteer, or we call them ambassadors at COVID Africa. If you just go onto our website covidafrica.org, there is a very simple, easy to use ambassador sign up form, and we can onboard ambassadors through there.
And I'm sure if there are any musicians who want to as well partake in this and be part of this, they can also, I think we need to try and reach as many musicians as possible. I mean, music's always been used to raise money for humanitarian crisis, It's been going on, as we know, forever, and it uplifts people, it uplifts nations, it raises funds. But I think it's really going to depend a lot on the kind of musicians we get and who we get on board. So I think part of this message we need to is also try and get as many South African artists to want to do this.
Well, African artists. Yeah.
African artists, yeah, absolutely. African artists, yeah.
This is a conversation for the general public as well, submit who you think, put the pressure on those artists from your side. I mean, the power is in all of our hands as individuals, as African citizens. Put pressure on them to connect with COVID. I think it's all of our responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
So cool. So like I'm actually watching our live stream and I'm seeing that I shared the link with some of my friends and I see that some are actually reaching out with ideas on how we can get further funding or stuff like that, like publicly. And that's how the power of technology is now working, through a single WhatsApp. Now I've got people linking me with other financial institutions to say, reach out to this guy. He will connect. I see the names there. Bongani just like left a comment on who we can contact. So I'm hoping that we can reach out to as many people as possible. And through this platform, I think I'm gonna tag as many musicians as possible through social media. I've got a lot of people on LinkedIn as well that I'm gonna tag and make sure that they follow.
Digital. I mean, that's where digital technology, as you said, is coming in. It's going to transform. It can absolutely change this from us sitting here having a nice little conversation to suddenly, everybody wants to be a part of this amazing initiative. So off you go. Sure. Don't let that stop you, Karabo.
Yeah. But okay.
Maybe just one thing to that technology point. What I also think is very interesting to see, like, to gather all those ideas. Like, we have a pool of 250 people. They are all super, super motivated and have amazing ideas. And what we noticed at some point was the difficulty was to organize all those ideas. Everyone wants to make their input and help us. And then we had to figure out, okay, how are we going to prioritize? Like, there's such a rapid flow of information. And then the difficulty becomes, like, how to prioritize and see, okay, what are the right ideas and which paths should we follow? And I think it's insane to see how this global community gets so many creative ideas and solutions and everyone's like focusing on the same good cause and trying to find a solution for that. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yes, it absolutely is. And I think everything that you all are doing is fantastic. Just your mere participation tonight, I know it will echo across Africa. This is the start of a movement in Africa that is bound to kick off, especially with passionate humans such as yourselves. I am going to close it off right now, but I know this is the first of many discussions that we will have on this topic and many more, I suppose, going forward. So firstly, thank you to Nicholas for all your input, for starting this initiative along with Killian, and for Scott for heading up, collaborating all of these resources together. So I'm going to bat it out to you guys. Any outros that you want to do? Nicholas?
I want to focus on the donation aspect again. What is that we need to raise in a very short amount of time where every day counts. We need to raise as much money as possible. And I think one of the biggest takeaways, besides talking about technology and the possibilities out there, is that there is a looming humanitarian nightmare threatening over many, many people. And it is up to us to mitigate the risk of death and to mitigate the risk of suffering by coming together wherever we are from and to donate on our platform so that doctors can do the work that they need to do.
And just to remind everybody, it's COVAID, so COVAID, Africa.org. Go on, guys, and donate. Share. We'll be sharing a link on Instagram soon. So if you follow any of us that are in this conversation, each one of us will be sharing on the different social platforms. So go on and donate, sign up, get informed. And if you want to have a conversation with Nicholas and Kilian, just start it on social.
Can I just say one thing? I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our volunteers who have actually made this possible. I think, today is our launch day, and to have just even to be experiencing this, I think is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that I can speak for both myself, Nick, and Kilian that, a huge thank you to our volunteers, because we wouldn't have been able to do this without any of them. And I think that they really deserve the praise, because it has been incredible to see how everyone's come together.
Okay. And then lastly, to the panelists, thank you all for taking time out to have a very heated and good discussion on what's happening in our world at this moment. So to Cindy, to Scott, to Nicholas, Kilian, Pumi, to Karabo, and to the very lovely Andy Davis herself. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you. Thank you for this.
No problem. We'll be having more of these going forward. Look out again, guys. COVAID, COVAID.org, Africa.org.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.